Hey folks, welcome to the show. My name is Dylan Arathnaka, and most people call me T. By day, I'm a site reliability engineer, and by night, I'm a whole bunch of other things. I'm a DJ, I'm a content creator, an aspiring writer, and now I guess a podcast host. On this show called Tech Related, we interview interesting people in tech and adjacent fields to learn about their experiences and answer the question of, what do you really do? Through these interviews, we hope to learn more about their stories, their lessons learned, and the overlap that exists within so many fields in this hyper-connected world. If this is your first time tuning in, please check out our website online at techrelatedpodcast.com, where we'll have a link to all of our speakers, show notes, and any other supporting details. If you enjoyed the show, or even if you hated it, we'd love to hear your feedback. Please reach out to us at show@techrelatedpodcast.com. Yep, that's an email. Or tweet us at TechRelatedShow on Twitter. And now for today's very first guest. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Amazing backend developer and master of Go routines, Sadie Freeman.
Oh, wow. That's a great intro. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you intro everything I do?
Sure. Master of pottery and getting clay everywhere. No, maybe not. That's just, I'm just making fun of you at this point. Cool. Sadie, how's it going? How are you doing today?
It's good. I'm doing good today.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's been a day. It's sunny in Vancouver.
Yeah, that's something we can
honestly, yeah.
We can be happy about. Before we start every episode, I like to ask everyone, what are they drinking today? So Sadie, what are you drinking today?
I'm drinking a Tempo Gin Smash.
Okay.
Actually, don't know what flavor it is, but it's very nice. It's one of those few canned drinks that is like actually good.
Okay, can you now describe it like a wine connoisseur?
Yeah, so it has obviously taste notes of juniper.
Ooh, okay.
Which makes sense because there's gin. And like a little hint of strawberry, I think. Possibly some lime in there.
Okay.
With a refreshing fizz.
Wow. I will try to describe what I'm drinking, which is a Corona Sunbrew, which is non-alcoholic Corona.
Nice.
And this brand of beer is forever associated with a terrible time in everyone's lives. So cheers. Let's go.
You mean like being a teenager?
No, I just mean the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but also, I mean, I guess,
right.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the association. It tastes like what I would assume the color greenish yellow tastes like.
That doesn't sound great, I'll be honest.
Yeah, you're right. It tastes, I'm not going to describe it, but we're going to keep moving on.
Sunshine. Tastes like sunshine.
Tastes like sunshine. Yeah, this drink tastes like sunshine. We'll edit that in. I like to ask the second question, which is, what is your current role and what is your LinkedIn title if they are different?
Ooh, I like that. So my LinkedIn title is Senior Backend Engineer, and that is my job. And I also sometimes on projects work as a tech lead as well. Sometimes I put that in as well. Backend engineer, tech lead.
What do you do in your role? And this question has two flavors. So the first one is, how would you explain this to like your aunt or your uncle that you meet at a party?
So why am I meeting my aunt and uncle at a party?
I don't, they're cool aunts and uncles. They're
okay.
a cool aunt. Yeah, it's a cool aunt.
Like I just bump into them.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're getting potato salad. You're getting potato salad. And then you've met, it's like, oh, Sadie, how's it going as a backend developer and tech lead?
I love it. This makes me giggle because I was thinking about this. So my aunt and uncle met working for a tech company that made, I think still makes flight tracking software. Oh, okay. So my uncle is a programmer and my aunt works in IT. Okay. Or worked. They're both retired now. So actually explaining it to them is really easy. Right. And I was actually talking to my uncle about it. I saw him a couple weeks ago because he was working on like this Raspberry Pi project, the Raspberry Pi, the credit card size computers. Okay. And I was describing something that I do in my job. And like the next day he was like, oh, so I used that thing you were talking about, but I'll pretend that.
So you have cool aunts and like cool aunt uncles and like techie aunt uncles too. Like that's cool.
Yeah. My family is pretty techie on my dad's side. And then like my grandma on my mom's side, she knows I do computers. Right. So I guess the middle ground of how I describe what I do to people at a party, potato salad. Right. So I work for a company called Dapper Labs, and we work on blockchain, NFT, NBA Top Shot. We built like basketball card collectibles, but digital, which is somewhat important background information, usually because then people in my life are like, oh God, NFTs, what are those? But if we're just talking about like what I do on kind of back end, because what I do doesn't necessarily relate to blockchain all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, your beer is overflowing.
We'll keep that in.
So the way I kind of describe it is like, if you have software or a website, you have the kind of user facing thing. You have the thing that you look at. We call that like the front end. And if you are thinking about the way a software development team works, usually you would probably have a designer who dictates or collaborates on what that looks like, and product folks who decide kind of what this thing does. And then you have the front end, which is what people actually see. And you have front end engineers who are responsible for building that, making it align with the designs, and also handling all that functionality that then talks to the back end, which is what I work on. The back end takes the information that the front end gives it, and a lot of the time that is data. Like it takes the data that the front end gives it, and sometimes it is responsible for changing that data or saving it to a database. A lot of the time it's interacting between the front end and the database. And so essentially that's what I do, is I write code that takes information, saves it, changes it, and spits it back out.
I like the analogy you use. It reminds me of the one I used on my previous episode with Jeff, who is a front-end developer. We talked about the difference being like in a restaurant, there's front of house and then there's back of house. So front of house is like, having like the waiters, the hosts, they'll bring you your food. It's a presentation of how it looks on your plate and put this down on your table. And then the back of house is like the chefs, the people that are building the meals or like ordering all the items or like going to the freezer and picking back up. Like, so like if you were to look at a restaurant analogy, you are back of house, getting everything ready to be presented to the user.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I love that analogy. I'm like spitting in the food in the back.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Nice. Quality assurance. And how would you explain what you do to fellow tech people in the industry if you were talking to another engineer?
Yeah, so I think usually most folks in tech will have an idea of the concept of front end and back end. So usually when I say back end, people will know what that means. And then I'll usually say, like, I work in Go. So Go is the programming language that we use. And I work on, I guess, the infrastructure of what we work on. With Go, we use gRPC to exchange information across different services, and GraphQL as well to talk to the front end. And essentially, we're building the APIs that the front end is using. And within that context, we're also interfacing with the blockchain because it is a blockchain business. And for non-technical folks, I would just say that the blockchain, essentially, you can think of it as another database, but with like a layer on top that's like a chunk of code that knows what to do when you send it the data. And for more technical folks, I write some smart contracts, which is that chunk of code that lives on top of the blockchain layer. Yeah.
This is where I'm going to take a tangent because I like learning. So like you mentioned gRPC, and as a notice for the viewer, Sadie and I used to work together. I used to work at Dapper as well. And Sadie taught me a lot about Go because that was very new to me and I had no idea what smart contracts or like event source systems were, but now I do, thanks to you, Sadie. But my question is, I noticed you would use gRPC, and for me, I just think gRPC equivalent to HTTP. What's like, if you were to do a quick ELI5, explain the difference, and like, why would you use one? Why use gRPC? Like, is there a reason, or like, if someone that was working with HTTP started working with gRPC, what's like the Sadie's notes? Just keep these in mind. Is there anything different?
Cool. So this is something I should know the answer to. It's faster. Can I Google this?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to. Like, I'm just like, is there anything I should know?
I really should know the difference.
That's cool.
I mean, I do. Like, yeah. It's what we use to talk service to service. Let me just refresh my memory so I can sound intelligent.
This is how you know you're talking to a good software engineer, because they'll actually check the answer before spouting off some random stuff.
Okay. I was right. Because in my head, I was just like, well, it's faster. And that's really, I worked with gRPC for most of my career. I think because people tend to use gRPC and Go.
Okay.
Together quite often.
That's the Google connection, right?
Yeah. And gRPC is written in Go.
Right.
So it translates really well. But essentially it's just faster. It's just a different
okay.
way of sending message communications between services.
Right.
And so there's less latency with gRPC. So when we were building Top Shot, a lot of the decisions we made on architecture and languages, like one of the reasons we used Go was because we anticipated that there was going to be a need for scale. So many of the decisions were just around like, how can we make something work as fast as possible? Especially when you're working with blockchain, because there is some latency, because blocks have to be sealed and that takes time on the blockchain. So you want everything else to work as quickly as possible. So that was kind of behind the decision to use gRPC. But basically, yeah, faster. Works with Go.
So with that being said, you work on backend services, you work on systems that write to the blockchain, which is just like a distributed database with like specific layer on top, which is smart contracts. And in the more accessible analogy, it's that you work back of house to make sure that the food is good for the customer.
Yeah. And the blockchain is like the supplier, and you're like, hey, I need some cake. And you're like, okay, give me a minute. I'll get you some cake. I think, yeah, how I would just tack blockchain onto that.
Hey, so if your job was, making cups of coffee, what would the blockchain be?
If it was coffee, then the blockchain, I guess, would be maybe a coffee grinder.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because you like put the coffee beans in, wait a minute, get the coffee beans out, and then you can do stuff with the coffee beans to get coffee, I guess. Yeah. Like it really is just give it information, it does a thing with a thing, and then you get back something.
Okay.
And in the case of blockchain, it's like you get back something, but not right away.
Right. Because
so it makes it annoying to build on.
Compute it and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
I got off track again. So with all these things that you do, what do you really do at work? People say, oh, I write code. I build things that talk to databases. I send emails. But like, what kind of emails? What kind of code do you write? Like, what does your work entail? What would you say you really do here?
So like on an actual day,
yeah,
actual day-to-day basis. Yeah, it's funny. Like I write less code at the moment. Part of that has been when I've been working more in like tech lead capacity, because a lot of what I do is communicate between my engineering manager and product folks, and then the other engineers on my team, and the other tech leads. And there's more almost like architecture stuff where we have...
Is it how all the pieces fit together?
Yeah. So like if we get, oftentimes we'll work on features, not necessarily, but usually, a chunk of work comes in the form of a feature, as in something that the company says, hey, we want this product to do this. And it might be, if it was like Instagram, it might be, hey, we want to be able to post pictures. And so oftentimes what I'm doing is going, okay, so we have to post pictures. So we as the back-end team need to agree with the front-end team what our communication looks like, as in what information do we get from the front end? What information do we send back from the back end? So I'll be working with the front-end team to define that, and then working with the back-end team on, okay, what does our database look like to make sure that we can get the information correctly. So that's when I'm maybe whiteboarding something or like drawing it out, and trying to kind of visualize like, how does this thing all work together? Like, how does this information get from A, B, C, and then all the way back? And then I'm on Slack. So
it's a chat tool.
Chat tool. So sometimes my day involves answering PagerDuty calls, which is always fun.
Shout out on call.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm on call right now, so
am I.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we have to cut this interview short, it's because we're both getting paged.
Things are on fire. Yeah, so that's a part of my job, is like responding to incidents, coordinating, like if something does go wrong, talking to people, calming them down, and telling them when it's going to be fixed, and then sometimes fixing it. And then one part that I really enjoy too is just like working with people, and I get to mentor and be mentored, which is really great. So sometimes like pair programming. Sometimes I'll be on calls with people from my team, and we're talking about how to solve something. So in that example, when we're working on a feature, usually we're all talking about, how does this work? And sometimes it'll be one person that leads it and then writes up an ADR, an architectural diagram. What's the R?
It's architectural design review.
Design review? Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, architectural.
It's the thing that describes the thing, right?
PRD, and I can't remember what that stands for. Product review design something.
Google this real quick.
It's a PRD. Product requirements document and architectural decision records. Yeah, so with new features, we will write an ADR, or an architectural decision record, which just, I mean, records what we're thinking of doing, how we want to kind of solve this problem or build this feature, the pros and cons. So, you have to think about the trade-offs. Like if I do this one way, it might be quicker to build, but then it might be something that's harder to build on in the future, things like that. And then also part of my day would be on like PR reviews. So looking at, pull requests when someone has written a piece of code and they want to merge it into the rest of the code, they'll put it up as a PR and then tag folks in their team. And then we'll go and look through it. And so like reading through people's code, making comments, and approving it.
The way
they can merge it in.
I was explaining PRs to my girlfriend the other day, and it's like peer review. It's how you peer review your code before it gets merged into everything else, so that if everything's on fire, you can go, well, it wasn't just one person. Like 2 people have looked at this, or like, oh, like multiple people have looked at this. So we have like some level of confidence that this is actually good.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a good way for people to learn, especially, when you are mentoring someone, you can show them how code standards work in your organization. And equally, that's kind of how you learn code standards in a new organization when you're going to work somewhere new, and find out like, oh, here we write the code this way. So, and that's good because it keeps code easy to understand for everyone on the team that's working on it. Because if everyone's in agreement, then the next person that comes along that has to like build off of what you wrote can do it without having to go and read through it all again because maybe they've PR reviewed it. So yeah, that's part of my day. So a lot of it is like documenting things and talking to people, and then sometimes I get to code.
Yeah. So I think that's like a common pattern we notice, is that once you start in the role, you're like heads down doing the thing, which in our first episode, Ben was an account manager. He was like doing renewals. He was sending emails, looking into customers, seeing how the health was. Jeff from episode 2, when he started, he was literally like coding up the designs that his front-end designer would give him because he's a front-end dev. So he would be building the pages, doing all that. And then for you, when you were a back-end developer early in your career, you would be building what the feature had been defined as. As a tech lead, you are doing the first step in the stream of work, which is like high level overview. We need to build this feature. Product says we need to do this. And you're like, cool. What are the like different pieces? Like you break it down, and then those get created into cards or tasks. And that's what the backend engineers will pick up and start doing. So that's why I think in what you explained, it's not just code. You're doing a lot of like stakeholder management, communications, all that, because you're now at that level where you're kind of seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And it's different, especially the tech lead role is so different across different companies. But certainly where I've kind of found myself is that it does lean a bit heavier on communication side of things. You will get tech leads that are just much more like heads down technical, but it can be pretty broad. But yeah, I kind of find myself doing a mixture of both. As
a tech lead, when ADRs need to be made, is it you that kind of takes the lead on building them? Or is it that another engineer on the team that might, be interested in that, they'll do it and you help review and bring it up to the point where we present it? Or like, how does that process work?
Yeah, so not necessarily, it's definitely not always me. In fact, I think it's pretty shared equally across the team, especially at the moment. At the moment, I'm working with like 3 other tech leads too. So there isn't really, one of us that like takes the lead on something. But when I worked in kind of smaller teams, usually there's someone that is taking the lead on something, and that can be by all means not necessarily like a senior or a tech lead, but yeah, so it could be reviewing those ADRs and making suggestions. And sometimes that just depends on, there's areas of the code base that I have some expertise in, and there's areas of the code base that I have no idea what's going on. And so luckily I work in a really great team of people where we all lean on each other really heavily, and I think support each other, where I can go, hey Jude, how does this thing work? That wasn't a reference to a Beatles song. Jude is actually someone I work with, and so we collaborate a lot actually, which I think sometimes surprises people, because when you think of tech companies, you don't necessarily think about people working together a lot, or even just like collaborating on coding and things like that.
Speaking of collaboration, I noticed you mentioned coding and a lot of non-coding words, but you haven't mentioned the word that starts with the letter M.
What's that word?
Meetings.
You know what's funny? I haven't had a lot of meetings lately.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
our team has been trying like more of an async process. So we have had our stand-ups, like where we share what we've been working on the day before and the day after, or the like current day. We've been doing that on Slack, and a lot of our things have been just on Slack to kind of eliminate meetings, because most people don't love having meetings all day every day. I think we found that out during the pandemic. But yeah, meetings are a part of my life. And so actually part of that too is like the process that we take work on. We work in sprints, and so we'll do like a retro at the end of a sprint. We talk about what went well, what didn't go well. We do that as a meeting. And then usually when we are about to start a new feature, we do have
More synchronous.
That's pretty meeting heavy, because you're just like, you need to talk to people face to face.
When you're working throughout the day, most of your stuff is asynchronous. Do you find yourself getting into huddles or video calls? And if so, like what triggers that?
Yeah. So sometimes I think we're pretty good at recognizing when a Slack thread has gone on too long. Like when too many people are talking to each other on Slack about one thing, usually someone, it's usually not me, but usually someone will go, can we just hop on a call? Right. So there is that comes up. I'm also lucky that I work like hybrid. So I work.
Oh, right. Yeah. Your team
somewhat remote, but I also go into the office, and a lot of folks on my team are Vancouver based. So I see them. And so that makes it really nice, because I can just, Jude, help me with this thing. So we do talk in person, like sometimes when we're in the office, which is nice, because that is kind of how it was. Well, that is how it was before we all went remote. That's
very lucky. I can tell you right now that I very much miss being in person. But it's cool that you guys by being in person, you can also kind of lean more heavily on async, because you know if you need something, once you're in person, you can also kind of hash it out. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good mix, because sometimes it's just like, hey, let's chat about this on Wednesday in person. But then I know there's also the flip side where, because not everyone is in person. And so I think you have to balance it, because sometimes it can be unfair to people that aren't there in person, because they're not getting in those like hallway conversations.
The hallway track, as they say.
Yeah.
So now I understand what you do as a back-end engineer and / tech lead. Can you take me through a regular day, perhaps even to go as far as looking at your calendar and explaining what you did on a certain day?
Oh man, put me on the spot.
Yeah. And everyone's like, I gotta make this interesting. Which day did I, start off by going to the gym and having like a kale smoothie? It doesn't have to be that. I'm just curious what a regular day would look like.
Oh, so you want everything, not just work?
I mean, like, you can keep it towards work, but like,
I'll make it interesting.
We're more than our jobs, Sadie.
This is true. We are more than our jobs. The last couple of weeks have been weird, because I was on holiday and I came back. And so I have had a bunch of meetings, but actually Monday was kind of cool. Yeah, let's do this Monday. So Monday I woke up.
Nice.
I'm still a bit jet lagged. So I've been waking up early, which has been great. And it's sunny, so I sit on my patio and have my coffee.
Very nice.
And I did a bit of knitting as well.
Wow.
Which is very wholesome. And then I hung out with my cat.
What are you knitting, by the way?
Socks.
Okay.
I knit socks. Sweaters take way too long, but socks are quite rewarding. I had my coffee, had my breakfast, and then Monday I was working from home. And so pretty much first thing I do is just log on and check Slack. And I can waste time checking Slack, so I'm trying to get better at that, because that can be a sinkhole. Checked Slack, responded to some messages. I didn't have any meetings, so that was nice, because I like starting off my Mondays just like catching up and refreshing my memory. And then I was working on, I did some PR reviews. I remember that. Quinn had some PRs. Quinn, who I work with. Quinn's great. She had some PRs that she was looking to get in, so I reviewed those and I approved them. And then I was working on, actually, again, like less code, but some deployment stuff. So I'm working on a project that is basically backfilling a bunch of data.
Deployment is the act of taking what you have, your code, and actually applying it so that's live, like it's actually happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Just your helpful, friendly neighborhood SRE.
Nice, yeah. Yeah, so I'm working on this kind of like backfill, and it's basically getting all of this information over the past like 4 years for one of our products and kind of shoveling it into this new system that we've been creating. So I was working on that, and I was doing a lot of like adjusting config files, like configuration files. So like adjusting settings basically to try to get this thing to trigger. And so I put up a couple PRs And then I was deploying the code and checking like the log to see if they were working. And then they weren't working. And then I tried another thing. So a lot of my day on Monday was that. And actually, even before that, I had an issue connecting to the VPN that we use because I wasn't in the office. And if I'm in the office, it doesn't matter. I couldn't access the database. And the database was how I verified that the thing that I was working on works, because things should start appearing in the database, but they weren't. Well, I couldn't connect, and then they weren't. So then I actually hopped on a call with Sean, who we just ran into, who works in IT, and he helped me fix the VPN issue. And then I went back to troubleshooting that, and can't remember how I ended the day on Monday. I don't think I actually got it fully. I think I had...
Wait, did you eat lunch though?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
I ate
That's
lunch.
good.
Yeah. What did I have for lunch? I think Nima made lunch. Yeah. Nima's my partner. I think he made lunch. And then I went to yoga after work.
This is 2 out of 3 guests that have now mentioned yoga in their day in the life. So I love it. Yeah.
Is that bad? Does that mean that tech people need to relax?
Maybe. You might be onto something here.
Probably.
But we'll just ignore that piece.
Yeah, I went to yoga. Then I came home and then I made, this is so geeky, but I made a beetroot salad. And so first I went to yoga. It was really nice.
Yeah.
And then I finished, and then I was walking home and I walked past Ernest Ice Cream.
Oh, nice. Did you grab a pint?
Obvious. Well, I got an ice cream.
Okay.
I called up Nima and I was like, I'm by Ernest. Do you want to come have ice cream? So he came and met me. We had ice cream, and then we walked back home. And then we went to Nestor's and got some groceries. And then I made a beetroot salad. And we had got the beets at the farmer's market.
Nice.
And I
Beets,
used...
bears, Belshazzar, Nope. Moving on.
Yep.
That one. Yep.
And then the lettuce I had grown myself patio in my little planter. So I went out and like cut... It was just a very wholesome day because I went out and like cut the lettuce, and then... and the strawberries that I put in it, also from my garden. Very cool. And then I got an early night. It was good. I hung out with my cat, Jojo,
and your other one,
and the new cat. And the new cat. I hung out with the 2 cats. I watched them hiss at each other.
Okay.
And then I tried to give the new cat some food, and she hissed at me.
Oh, I mean, with entertainment like that, who needs cable TV?
Yeah, we didn't even watch TV.
Wow, your day sounds like... I feel like you talked about the 2 technical things you had to do, but there was a lot of debugging that was happening underneath all that, right? Like you're talking about, I was building this feature and I was testing that it worked, and I checked the log files, and then the VPN stopped working. But like underneath all that, you were checking log files. You're like, oh, this isn't working. Let me try that. And like going through all the different tools that you have, and then like, oh, new problem. How often does that happen in your role? Like just in tech or like as a backend engineer, like where you start
every day.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my life, which is cool. Cause I like that. Cause I feel like my whole job is just solving a puzzle.
Yeah.
It's just one big puzzle piece that I'm trying to like slot in.
Yeah.
But like, that's everything I work on.
Yeah.
Everything I work on is, I tried a thing, it didn't work.
Right.
Tried another thing, it kind of worked or didn't. And then you just kind of keep like getting a little closer to the solution.
I came back from my the course that I was on in May, and I came back, and I remember like before I left, I was like kind of like a little bit burnt out because like it was just solving problems after problems. And after I came back, I remember the first 2 weeks felt amazing. And what I mean, like the feeling I could like explain closest to was like I was hitting all the green lights. So I was picking up cards that were like really well defined. I could do it. And like the first or second thing just worked. Like I would write some code.
Bastard.
Yeah, the test would pass. The PR was like, yeah, good to go. Like it would just, things would start happening. Like, and those 2 weeks, they were bliss. I was like, wow, I'm back. I'm great. I'm better than ever. And then like last week I just crashed, and like, it was like, yeah, the first thing didn't work. Second thing didn't work. 8th thing didn't work. And I was like, why can't, it obviously can never be easy. And then everyone else was like, yeah, that's the job. Like that's why we do this. It's never easy. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's a good point. And like I think that's the difference between, I don't know, for me as a naive junior engineer being like, oh, maybe if I just get better, I'll get it right on the first time. And now it's just like, no, it just usually never worked on the first time, and you just got to be patient enough to keep trying. Like that's my one note of adversity I guess I found.
It's so true. That was something my my tech lead told me when I was a junior dev. was that the only difference between a senior and a junior is just that the senior knows how to Google things better because they've run into that problem so many times before. And so they just know how to deal with it but it continues to happen. And you go from feeling like you're the dumbest person in the world and you can't figure this thing out and everybody hates me.
Hey, are you me?
maybe that's what is it? Catastrophizing. So then you solve it and you're like, I'm so fucking good at this. I don't know if I can swear. But...
No, you can swear. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I put the explicit tag on for this
Okay,
episode.
good.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it feels so good. You're like, I had a problem and I solved it and I'm a genius. Like, I'm an actual genius. And then the next day you come into work and you're like, no, I'm dumb again.
And you just get humbled immediately. Yeah.
I think that's why I like it.
Thank you for sharing what you did in the day and actually going through your calendar. I love doing that because it's cool to see like what people really do. So that's really fun for us to see.
It's nice also for me to realize that I was doing work.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, what do I do? But
just read these docs and hit the green button sometimes.
And also I just came back from holiday and did not have your experience. I like forgot everything.
Right. So actually on my first day, I need to log into something and I was using my phone because I hadn't sat down on my computer yet. And I forgot how to enter my password.
Oh yeah.
But on my phone. But like I sat down on my computer and I just did it with my fingers. But on my phone, I was like, I got to think about what the word, anyways. Yeah. What are some of the biggest things in your industry right now? It's just an ambiguous term, things, very scientific.
Yeah, I think everyone under the sun is trying to come up with a problem to solve with AI right now. So there's that, but which is fine. I mean, I think especially think about like back end things. The last couple of years, it's been just about scaling, I think. I mean, maybe that's the world that I've been living in too, because that's really relevant to my job. A lot of the things I've heard or seen talks about or read things about is focused around how to scale back-end services, focusing on efficiency. And I think if there's like new fancy things, Go is not as trendy as it once. No, I'm not gonna say that.
Why?
No, someone
Why are you on the Rust train now? Okay.
No, but yeah, so Rust is like super trendy now.
Yeah.
I don't know aside from that. Oh, Buff is like so we use gRPC.
Like buffers? Protobufs?
Yeah. So we use protobufs like gRPC for the communication service to service. And there was a tool called ProtoTool.
Okay.
That we used to generate the protobuf files. But has been deprecated for a while and had a lot of versioning issues that were starting to kind of creep up because it had been deprecated. And so Buff, BUF, is the new fancy schmancy tool for generating proto files. So,
okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
I swapped over one of our code repos to use Buff, and it's been very smooth.
Very cool. All right. This part of the podcast is where I was going to say dim the lights, but that's not the right tone here. This part of hang on. Circle back. This part of the podcast is where we want to learn a bit more about you. And this question is titled, what is your story? How did you get into tech? There are a lot of people in tech that have very non-traditional paths in. And nowadays it's becoming more and more common, which is awesome. Because I think having people that come in with all sorts of experiences just adds, it just rises the tide for everyone.
Love it. Okay, so I have been a developer for 5 years now. I don't have a formal post-secondary education background. Never went to university. I went traveling instead, and then I ended up, I went traveling to London for 6 months, and then I lived there for 7 years by accident. It just happened. Yeah. And while I was there, I ended up again, accidentally kind of falling into a job. I worked for a restaurant group and I worked in learning and development. And so I was working on anything from management training plans. We used to run courses for senior managers and senior chefs on things like training or management. And so I was...
Like train the trainer kind of stuff?
Train the trainer.
Yeah.
I run a sick train the trainer course.
Okay.
And I was also coordinating a lot of just running those sessions and scheduling them in. And so I did that various different roles for 5 years.
Okay.
And I was reaching the point with that as a career where I wasn't really finding it as fulfilling as I once did. Okay. I really wanted to learn more, and I'd always been drawn to technical things. Mm-hmm. My dad is really computer savvy.
Your uncle is
my uncle,
software developer,
my whole family is like computer geeks. Actually, that's why I was good with computers, because my dad, we had a computer from when I was pretty young, and my dad just became really good with computers, and so I'm from a really small town. Everyone in town was always asking him to fix their computers. And so then when I went to him with computer help, he was like, no, you Google it.
Right.
You figure it out. So I figured that I learned that from my dad, which has become a very valuable programmer skill. And like I learned HTML from Neopets.
Nice.
Too. So
okay. Yeah.
Apparently that's really common for like women my age, like millennial women who are programmers. So many of us, it's because, it's like we got our start doing HTML on Neopets.
And then like it slowly transitioned to like the Tumblr theming with CSS. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was talking about this the other day because I didn't have a Tumblr. I had Nexopia.
Wow.
Which ages me a little bit. Because apparently I'm right on the cusp of like, no one younger than me knows what that is. And it's a Canadian thing too.
Right.
I don't think...
Nexopia.
I'm pretty sure it's a Canadian company, but as far as I know, I haven't met anyone outside of Canada that had Nexopia.
Okay.
But yeah, like you got to figure out how to make the band lyrics look moody, and you do that with HTML.
Right.
So that's a peek into my childhood, teenage.
Your emo phase was through font styling.
Oh yeah,
I got it.
Yeah. I actually, my Neopets, I made a guild, and it was a Matrix fan page.
Okay.
And my greatest accomplishment was that I got the code running down. I got it to like the animated code to run down on the screen.
Oh, very cool. Which
took about 5 minutes to load on the page. Because this was in like the early 2000s, and it was not. Right. Computers were not built for that. Right. Our internet was not built for that. But I'm very proud of that.
You were tackling scaling problems before it was cool. Yeah.
But anyway, I never really thought about going into software engineering, computer science. University wasn't really as accessible for me. Even though I did okay in school, but I just didn't really want to go to university right away. Mm-hmm. And it's expensive. Yeah. It's really expensive.
Heck yeah.
So anyway, fast forward back to I was working in learning and development, and I was kind of delving into tech solutions for things because there was areas of my job that, and basically I got bored with some stuff, and I was like, okay, well, how can I make this quicker?
How can I automate the things?
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time in spreadsheets, and I kind of like tinkered around, and at a certain point, like I kept kind of trying and starting and stopping, trying to teach myself things, or like doing computer science online courses and things, but it's really hard to get into when you're not doing it every day. Right. And then one of my projects that I was really pushing for was migrating to an online learning management system. Okay. So that was kind of a big project at that job where I got to like source companies, and I put together a case for it. Right. And we purchased a system, and then I got to work with the team, like the company that
like implementation.
The implementation, yeah. And a lot of that I was working with. I was kind of the go-between between the HR team, because where I was working sat in the HR team. Okay. And the HR team, and then the developers that were working on it. Mm-hmm. So, but the whole time I was just like, I really would like to be on this side. Right. Like, I'd love to be able to do what they do, because I know what I need from this. And if I could just do it, it would be so easy.
Right.
So that was kind of going on in my mind. And then at the same time, I had decided that I wanted to move back to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And that coincided with, I was like, well, I'm going to quit my job.
Mm-hmm.
Going to move back to Canada. And then my best friend, Ksenia, had done a coding boot camp the year before. And she had got a job as a developer. And I remember her saying to me, like, you should do this. You would really like this. So my friend had done Lighthouse Labs coding boot camp. And she said, you should do this. I think you'd really like it. And so I got back to Canada and I did Lighthouse Labs, 3-month coding boot camp. I moved to Vancouver to do it. And it was like 3 very intense months. It was like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every single day. Like
actually a boot camp. Yeah.
It was proper boot camp. Yeah. There was no fucking around.
All right.
And it was really hard. And it was like, which was frustrating for me because I was like, but I'm good at computers.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's that moment where like, I thought I was good at this. What's going on here? Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I had an okay time in school. Like I didn't have to push myself a ton, which I know sounds really annoying.
Yeah.
But
you get it. You're smart. Ooh.
Asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm so bad at this. Right. I'm so bad at this. And it was really hard. And I don't know how, but I just kept doing it. And then got better and like cried in the bathroom a lot and then got better. Right? It's very therapeutic. And then I got my first job. So coming out of the boot camp, I got very lucky. I got a junior dev job at a little game studio here and working with a fantastic tech lead, Sean. Shout out to Sean, who I'm still friends with. Sean's great. And Sean was really looking for a junior to mentor and to teach Go. Because that's what he was working in. And so we were like a 2-person team because it was mostly game. Like the other devs were all Unity devs. They were all working on like the gaming engine. And so we were the 2 back end. So I was there for a year and I learned a ton. And then after a year, company things happen. Companies don't have as much funding as they once did. I got laid off, which... It's like if you work in startups, you get laid off. It happens. And then I was able to use my experience to get a job at Dapper, which was nice because I worked in Go and I was looking for Go jobs in Vancouver. And so it very nicely kind of lined up. And then I've been at Dapper for 4 years. And yeah, started out as junior dev, got to intermediate. And then last year I got to senior.
Very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a thing. It's been a journey.
2 things about your journey. I feel like you did a bit more at Lighthouse Labs than just learn. I feel like you also went and you taught.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I did that. Yeah.
What was that like?
That was really cool. So I ended up going back to Lighthouse and I taught the part-time intro to front end course, which was funny because I was working as back-end developer. But it was really fun. And I taught some lectures as well, which was a really nice way for me to combine something that I was already good at because I'd done the training stuff, kind of done a fair bit of like public speaking, to combine that with something that I was like kind of terrible at first was really nice. And I actually recommend it to anyone when they... You know, a lot of the time I'll talk to new grads. Sometimes they reach out on LinkedIn and I usually say like, go volunteer with something like Canada Learning Code. Okay. Because if you know more than you think once you've been through like a program like that. And if you can explain it to someone else and they get it, your brain kind of goes like, oh, I do know this. Right. And also it just like solidifies that for you. Because you have to think about how to explain it to someone. And usually by doing that, you realize like where your kind of gaps are. So I found that really cool, especially with the front end course, because I would prep for the lessons the week before. And I remember that with like teaching Flexbox.
Oh God. I can't. how do you center this box is one of the biggest questions
Oh
that
my
always
God.
just like destroys me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I have a tool for that.
Okay.
I made like a little Flexbox tutorial tool.
Oh, okay.
Because I had no idea how it worked. And I remember one of my lessons, I think I was describing using like Flexbox Froggy. Okay. It's cool. You should check it out. If you want to learn Flexbox Froggy is the way to go. But I was telling the students about Flexbox Froggy, and I was like, yeah, this became really useful when I was first learning Flexbox, which like they don't know was 2 days ago. Right. But but it was. But you don't have to, I think that's what I like about it, is like you don't have to be an expert in something to teach it. It's actually so much better if you're not, because you understand a lot more where people are coming from when they're new to it, and you can explain it a lot better. And I find that now, like I think I'm probably worse at explaining things to people who are new to the industry than I once was, because sometimes I forget that like, yeah, you don't know what like a deployment is, because why would you? Right. Whereas when I was really fresh to it, everything was so new, and so I kind of knew how to explain all of those things. So I always really encourage people. It's like the best way to learn, and it's also you're in the best position to teach.
Yeah.
As well.
I was thinking a lot about that, like the longer you stay in the industry, the longer you're in your role, it becomes harder to teach because you're not as close to the people that are just starting on their journey. Like you get further away, like the gulf of knowledge gets like further and further, deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
Further and deeper. One thing I used to do is I used to teach kids. It was in a youth program, and it's one of those youth programs where you start as one of the like the youth being taught, and then you become a leader and you teach the youth, and then you become like a supervisor of the youth. But like for me, I remember being like a 16-year-old peer leader. It was so much easier to teach because I knew like what the hot memes were, like what the lingo was, and it's easier to tailor my training into that. I remember like I was using memes in my PowerPoint presentations, which was huge back in 2009. But like I remember like maybe 6 years after that, I was like, how do I like now I just feel like I am lecturing. I am just reading about this. Like I can't make it relevant and relatable. Like I can try, but it's definitely not as easy as when I was first starting out. So my biggest thing is I wish I followed this advice, is like, I wish people would write more about their experiences as they go through it, because then you can look back and be like, oh, a deployment. Oh man, like I remember being stuck on how a deployment worked in Kubernetes for so long, but like now it's easier if I knew this. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. Do you keep notes on things? Like I was looking back at my old notebooks. I found some of my old notebooks from when I first started out, and I had been making notes. Yeah. And it was just so funny because it's like, this is what a variable is. Yeah. Because of course at the time I'm like, and now it just feels like a thing that's always existed in my brain. Yeah. But it hasn't.
I do have, so I used to use Notion, which is easy because the Dapper uses Notion, so that was awesome. But my current company doesn't, so I use Obsidian, which is like a locally hosted version kind of Notion. And I have notebooks, which I used to write in. But I find that if I can type it out and if I have enough focus and concentration, my notes that I type out are really good. But what I've been using a lot is my PRs. So I write my PRs as if I'm learning something, and I write it in a way that if someone comes across it in like a year, they can learn what I learned through reading it. Like that's the way I learn really well. It's like teaching it, learning by teaching. But for me, it's like learning by writing about what I did. It's like every PR that I read is kind of like a blog post. I'm known for having like really long PRs with like diagrams, but I feel good about it because people have said like, oh, I came across your PR from 2 years ago, and like it makes sense. So I'm like, oh, thank God. Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay.
I love that. PR descriptions are underrated. A lot of people just don't write them. Yeah. They just put up the code.
But it's like, that's how you present what you did to the world. So like, why wouldn't you? I mean, you could be like, the code speaks for itself, but it really doesn't. It doesn't. Like, especially because I wish GitHub would implement a thing where you could guide people on which way to go through the code.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? Like if you have 5 files, you can say like start at file 3, 2, 1, and then 4, 5, like, because that's the flow.
That'd be cool. Yeah. You should make that.
I should.
That would be really good. Because sometimes I like read through and then my brain melts and then I go to the bottom and read from the bottom up. Right. And then have to just like leave it and come back to it. Especially with long PRs.
Yeah. It's like, you just see Sadie just like scrolling down. It's like, nope, scrolling back up. What's she doing? Oh, it's
Give up.
it's tech lead stuff. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Have you found connections between the other jobs that you did and what you do now? You explained that you worked in learning development, the restaurant industry, and training the trainer. And now as a back-end engineer, do you find parallels or things that you did then that have helped you a lot now that you wouldn't have thought about?
Yeah, definitely. I think, well, funny on the technical side, actually, a lot of the time I spent in Excel really came in handy working with databases.
Okay.
It translates very well because one of the things with the HR system was I think we had to like map HR records into this new system. And so I was like trying to figure out that kind of mapping. And that turns out that's basically what database architecture is. It's like figuring out how to map, that information into something that you can then pull it out of in a readable format. So that helped a lot when I was learning about like database structure. But then the other thing, and I think probably the thing that's given my career the biggest boost is like the communication and collaboration, because I was very lucky in that I worked with a lot of people. I learned a lot, especially in that role working in HR, about like managing upwards and influencing and being diplomatic and also like making a case for, hey, you should buy this product because XYZ. And so I think all those things really helped me, because even when I was a junior dev, didn't know what I was doing on the technical side, I feel like I was able to communicate pretty well, especially when you're asking questions. Because asking questions, you wrote a blog post about this.
Yeah, shout out blog post. Yeah.
Woo! Asking questions effectively is huge.
Yeah.
Like it's a skill, and not all people have that skill. And so I think I'm really lucky that I had a fair amount of experience just like out in the world, working in an office with lots of people. That the communication side really helped me, and especially when it also comes to like influencing decisions, because I think that kind of like weighing pros and cons and being able to like put something out that makes sense and makes people want to agree with you has helped me a lot. Even when it's been like me saying, hey, you should promote me because of XYZ, right, or hey, we should build a feature this way because of XYZ. That helps a lot.
One thing I thought about, your time in the restaurant industry is more like back of house, but learning development. But I think especially like you've probably seen this in the teaching side, and for me, it's my second job in the Army, is that in those kinds of experiences you learn the importance of being efficient in communication, because like unlike what we get to do where we can send a Slack message and you can send like a paragraph, communication is not cheap. There's a cost. So like it's very important to be like very efficient with what you send and how quickly people can digest it. And I think that's like a huge thing that you're right, like collaboration and communication. Like I can see how those experiences could definitely have helped you on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like efficiency in communication, but almost in everything too. Yeah. Especially working in hospitality, which is just notoriously always cutting costs. Mm-hmm. I feel like I had a lot of experience of like, okay, but how do we do this with even less resources than we have right now? And even less. And yeah, communicating. You have to make things incredibly clear. Like I worked right before learning and development, I worked in recruitment for the same restaurant group. And chefs are insanely talented people, and they are a different breed. And you have to be so specific with them of like, you need to arrive at this time and this date. And you can't, you have to be efficient with the communication. You can't, they're not interested in hearing some big long story. Right. Whereas front of house people are a lot more, into it.
Or like if you're teaching a group of students, like if you're going on and on, you're just going to lose them. they're not gonna
exactly
get it.
Yeah, so maybe it's about just like tailoring your communication to different styles of how people learn. Because if you're explaining something to someone and they don't get it, it's not their fault. It's your fault.
Yeah.
You need to figure it. It's not your fault, but like
it's on you.
It's
like you have
on
more
you.
control. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to figure out how to explain it to that person better. If you explain it to someone, yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. There's a higher level of responsibility on you as a person that has the knowledge to explain it better.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your favorite part of your job?
Favorite part is that
The yoga. Yeah, the yoga is the favorite part.
I have two favorite parts. And one of them is that I get an immense satisfaction out of making a thing work by whatever means necessary. And sometimes I just find that really fun. And in my career, I have to get, as you progress, you have to get better at making things efficient. But sometimes I really like just like brute forcing something to work. I like just being given a problem and figuring out a solution by whatever means necessary. And then the other thing, I really love the people I work with. And I'm really lucky in my career to have worked with really fantastic people who have all helped me grow as a developer and been really generous with their time and effort in terms of like working in a team. Because I feel like I've learned a lot from the people I've worked with. And also there's something really cool when you're working in a team of people that really trust each other, where you can like really get shit done. Yeah. So yeah, kind of both of those.
What is the least favorite part of your job?
Pager duty.
Oh, okay. Being on call?
Yeah.
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 That's fair.
Hate it.
Okay.
Hate it.
What is being on call for people that might not know?
On call is the worst thing in the world.
All
No,
right.
I mean, yeah, so you're on call. You are basically responsible for answering alerts if they go off. So if the system goes down, if your part of the system that you're responsible for goes down, then you will get an alert and you must respond to it. And sometimes if you're lucky, it's a false alert and you can snooze it and go back to bed. And sometimes it turns into a 4-hour call and you're scrambling to find a solution for something and people are freaking out and the system's down. So there's a broad range of things it could be, but essentially it's responding to a bad thing that happened.
Yep.
And dealing with it.
So we are both on call right now, which is why we both have laptops nearby. And also you're on call 24/7 for your shift. So out of business hours, you might get paged at 6 p.m. or 3 a.m. So.
And there was a period of time when NFTs were really exploding. Our system was also exploding.
Nice.
in a great way, in a great way. But there was definitely a period of time where our alerts peaked.
You were tackling the scaling challenges head on.
We were, yes, like firsthand scaling
Right.
issues. And after that, for several months, maybe even a year, I would occasionally wake up in the middle of the night, having been paged. Right. And more than once, you get up, it's like 4 a.m, you get up, you open your laptop, like exhausted, can barely even think. Only to realize that pager duty had not gone off and I was just dreaming it because it had happened before. And so I think that's stopped now.
Yeah. It's like my friend who worked at McDonald's for a long time. Are there things that you still remember? He's like, dude, I can still hear the timers going off. Like for like the hash browns, like the patties, like I can hear the timers. I'm like, hey, yeah.
I also have that with I was a lifeguard.
Okay.
When I was a teenager, and I cannot watch someone dive headfirst into a pool.
Oh.
Because
okay. Yeah.
you're not supposed to.
Right.
Like you're really not supposed to unless it's very deep.
Yeah.
And you can hit your head.
Yeah.
Especially not in open. Don't ever dive headfirst into a lake. It's just stupid.
Right.
So PSA, don't do it.
Yeah. Tech fact, PSA. Yeah. Don't dive headfirst into a pool or a problem without asking for help. Maybe. No, that one works. If you were to go to a party right now with other people in your role, or back-end engineers or tech leads, what's a hot topic you could talk about, and can you then explain it to us? Can you like phrase it like you just arrived in a circle and you're carrying your Prosecco and you're about to say this hot take and then explain it for us afterwards?
I like the classy image of having Prosecco and talking about tech stuff.
The one from earlier was like, Go is such an old language.
Yeah. Go is such an old language. Yeah, someone would probably be like, oh yeah, I only code in Rust now. And my response to that is usually like, oh, cool. Yeah, I've been wanting to learn Rust. It sounds really cool. But I hear it has a steep learning curve, whereas like Go is really easy to pick up. And then if you think Go is not cool, then you're like, yeah, but it's such a pedestrian language.
Wow.
I've heard people really rag on Go. I like it.
Yeah, how's it feel now? I've been on Node.js for like the last 10 years, and everyone's been hating on it, and that's like the sport, but okay. Yeah. JavaScript, event loops. Ugh.
Gross.
Yeah.
I always find that funny when people like rag on different things, especially at conferences. That's a pet peeve of mine. Is conference talks that like shit on other things, just because I think it's bad
etiquette.
It's bad etiquette because
bad form.
You don't know who's in the audience. There's like maybe some junior dev that just started working in Ruby on Rails, and you get up and you're like, Ruby on Rails sucks.
Yeah.
They're like,
oh no, that's what I've been learning for the last 6 months.
There's 6 months of my life gone. But inevitably working in tech, I mean, there are a lot of people that like to point out how terrible something is.
Right.
So yeah, probably depending on the people at the party. Usually people just have an opinion that they want to share about something, and then it gets into just a fun little back and forth. Yeah.
That's funny because the next question is, what is your hottest take for anyone in your industry right now?
Okay, so my hottest take is argue less. And so this is like my pet peeve, because I have heard the sentiment that good programmers are people who like argue their point a lot. And I understand that from the aspect of when you are senior, when you've been working in something for a long time, you've encountered, the issues that you would normally run into, and you develop opinions on things. And it's because, that when you're working with XYZ, you can run into these problems. And so you'll come into a new scenario and go, I don't think we should work with XYZ because of XYZ or ABC. Because of this. Yeah, that's valid. However, choose your battles, people.
Right.
Because for the love of God, if I hear another argument about squash merge versus rebase versus whatever,
right,
I maintain the stance on this, that the amount of time people spend arguing about it is more time than anyone has ever spent being inconvenienced by one of those things.
Right. Yep.
So like, I find a lot of time people in tech just like to argue about things for
right,
the sake of it.
Instead of arguing about rebasing or squash merge, just do the thing. Like do whatever. Yeah.
Okay. If you all just commit to one, it's fine.
Right.
Does anyone actually look at commit messages? No, they don't. Do you?
I mean, I do, because
nerd.
During an outage, like a commit message might say what they did. And for SOC 2 compliance, it's kind of very important. But yeah.
No, I mean, okay. But yeah, stuff like that where it's like if you spend more time arguing about this than you would take to just like agree on something and do it, then just do the thing. Because it seems like a feature of working in tech is people are like, you have to be really opinionated and you have to like argue your point. And there's like a case to be made for using your experience and your knowledge to make cases for something. But when you're just constantly arguing because you're convinced that this is the best way to do something, I get bored. Like, I just tune out of those conversations and I don't care. But I just think it's not productive, and like it could be spent doing something else. That's my hot take.
That's growth, Sadie. No, I mean, that's a really good take. And that's actually, that's a lot less spicier than I thought you were going to go. But yeah,
Really?
I like it. Yeah.
Spicy
I thought you were going to say something like, be better at communicating on Slack or something like that. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like write documentation, write PR descriptions.
That's okay. We can go with the one you had. That's fine.
No, spicier.
Oh, it needs to be spicier. Okay.
Don't be a dick on Slack.
Yeah, okay.
Just be nice to people.
Yeah, be nice.
Be nice.
With that, Sadie, we're coming up to the end of our interview, and for this, I'd like to open it up to you and ask if there's anything else you would like to say.
I think don't be a dick is probably a good one to end on, actually.
Okay.
I think that's what I would like to finish off with.
For anyone
Just
that's thinking about this industry, just don't be a dick.
Honestly, you get so much further when you're not a dick. And it's funny how people don't understand that. Right. I have encountered engineers in my career who have been absolutely dumbfounded as to why they haven't progressed, because they're like, but I know all the technical things.
Right.
Like, yeah, but you suck as a person.
Yeah.
And that's why.
You need to grow a bit more.
Yeah, you need to. They don't suck as a person. They're just bad at communicating, and they think everyone's stupid. And
Yeah. You've come into tech from a non-traditional background. Do you have any advice or anything you would like to say to people that might be in similar circumstances considering tech?
Yeah, I think it's important to think about why you are considering tech, and it's probably a decent idea to try it out, see if it's something you really want to do. Not that I would ever discourage anyone from getting into tech, although it's different now than it was when I started. It is harder to get a job because, I mean, we all know there's been lots of layoffs and the market is just different from what it was 4 years ago. So I think it's just one of those things, like, make sure it's something you want to do, because it's not easy. I have seen, maybe not necessarily in people like that I know personally, but I've definitely seen people who want to get into tech purely for financial reasons, because and I mean, yeah, it's a convenient job because you can funnel it into something where you can work from anywhere, and generally the pay is good. So there's that. But I think if you aren't really passionate about it, or not even passionate, but if you aren't like really interested in it, that's only gonna get you so far.
Right.
I don't know.
It's not all yoga making big bank.
Beetroot salad.
Yeah, and beetroot salads. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Just kind of like do it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
But also, there's so many resources out there that you can really kind of delve into it before you commit to it. Mm-hmm. So, try stuff out. There's like Free Code Camp, Code Academy, Code Wars. I just discovered Unity has really good tutorials. Okay. So there's stuff like that I just recommend people kind of delving into. Mm-hmm. And then if you do really want to get into tech, be open to other like non-traditional kind of ways of getting in. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have a degree. Seeing more and more that a lot of people don't. Mm-hmm. And it's not degree or bootcamp. There's like in between. There's 2-year programs. Right. Heard the one at BCIT is really good. Diploma,
which is what I did.
Oh, is that what you did?
Yeah, and then I did the degree afterwards. But yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
There you go. Was it good?
It was all right. It was pretty good. The diploma was cool, but I did like the IT based one, which is more IT specific.
Oh, okay.
Like if I did the IT diploma and became an engineer, it would be like a developer. It would be a lot harder.
Yeah.
Which is why I did the degree. But yeah, if you're going into IT, it's great.
Yeah.
I would just say if you're going into development, use CSD instead of that. We'll get into that later, but yeah.
Anyway, yeah, there's a lot of ways you can get in, and you can be self-taught. And one of the things I always tell people too is just don't underestimate your previous experience. Mm-hmm. I've seen that a lot, especially with like new bootcamp grads. That sometimes when people reach out to me, they really feel like they're coming at job applications with nothing, mm-hmm. and usually they're people that have had a career before and have decided to switch, and that is usually very valuable. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just don't underestimate that and leverage it as much as you can. And that's, that's something I did where I was like, okay, well, I know how to train people. So how can I use that to get better at this thing? Luckily that translated really well. Might not for like everything. The lifeguarding didn't come in handy at all. But
that things get heavier in water, just like it's harder to debug when you're
things
looking
are lighter in water. You float.
Yep, never mind. This analogy just fell flat on its face. Yep, all right. Yeah.
Maybe
when you see a server on fire, you throw it a lifeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't get into submersibles made by billionaires.
Oh, yikes. Yeah, that's true. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. Say, with all the interesting things that you do and the cool things that you have to say, where's the best place for people to follow what you're doing and what you're talking about?
You can find me on GitHub at Sadie F. I'm also on, but I think I'm probably going to join Threads. That's the new cool thing.
Yeah.
But I'm at some version of Sadie F usually, or Sades F.
Sweet.
I'm on the things.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Sadie. Thank you for being a part of the Tech Related show. We loved having you, and we hope to have you on the show again in the future.
Thanks, Steve. It's been fun.
No.